Hello, my name is Tyler Bratton, and I'm going to be presenting about Alexander the Great and his campaign. So this is about Alexander the Great and his campaign across the Middle East, starting with Persia. A little overview on Alexander the Great and his campaign is Alexander was one of the youngest people alive to ever accomplish such a great accomplishment, starting with his father that united the states of Greece, even though his territory was not considered to be a part of Greece and all of the other states. Alexander the Great, even though he ruled a very short term, he also accomplished more than anybody around his time and years after that. Alexander the Great was able to conquer so many different kingdoms and empires with such a small army, which enabled him to move fast and a lot more quicker and able to provide to a lot of his soldiers to their needs, keeping them fed, healthy, and pay them pretty well. So he did something a little more different than what a lot of empires did during that time. He had a smaller army when other empires had over millions of troops, which kind of thinned them out over time. So Alexander also provided us to this day with great military tactics that we still train with all the armies that we have at our disposal, and also armies all over the world use his tactics and his strategies to train and also look back at what he was able to accomplish. So starting off with when, where, how, and why. So his campaign started in 3207 BC and went to 325 BC. So where he started at was all the way on this corner of the map in Pella and ended up going all the way across into Egypt as far as into India. So Alexander extended his empire through many, many different areas of the world, which was considered the whole world at the time. Nobody really knew about North America or South America. This type of area was the entire world to everybody around them. Alexander was not the only person that had credit to this military. Philip, his father, which passed away, leading Alexander to take over his role, Philip left him with a very trained military and generals. A lot of these generals were a lot older than Alexander, but also their sons trained with Alexander as they grew up. These generals and his army were very battle ready and knew how to fight and have been through battle. So they were coming into a very extreme and a very experienced military situation where Alexander, all he had to do was pick up and lead them with his tactics and his mind, since he was able to study a lot harder than a lot of these other kids that and his generals that he was with. His knowledge over battle strategies and all these other scenarios, which led him to be able to fight against so many different odds that outnumbered him a lot of times, whether it being areas, food, or military that he was going up against. So Alexander also accomplished a lot. He was able to modernize a lot of the world, like Greece. A lot of other empires and other areas in the world at this time were very considered behind the times, how Greece was. Greece was very ahead of everybody, with it being art, technology, knowledge, food, anything that was able to help them provide to their empire. They were the top of the line at the time. With this campaign that Alexander took on, he also was able to extend that knowledge all over the world to everybody, no matter where it was. one of the reasons I chose Alexander and his campaign is because growing up, I've always loved learning about this time. Also, Alexander also has caught my interest a lot. He was so young, but had so much to accomplish in such a short amount of time because his life was going to be taken away. Nobody really knew how long his life was going to be. With it being so fast that his life was taken, it kind of shows everybody what you were able to do within that short amount of lifetime. Even with him being so young and having those resources, it kind of sets the example, hey, you can do whatever you want. So I've always really loved learning about Alexander and all of the things that he has accomplished, especially with the odds that he was faced at. When he had over 50,000 soldiers, when he was having to go up against Darius the third, that had over 2.5 million soldiers spread out across the country that he was able to rule over. This didn't just put them at a very low point. It could have actually shut them out and he could have been wiped out very easily. This just goes to show how Alexander was very mentally stable and mature in how he reacted to certain things during battle and scenarios. His tactics and his military was top of the line during this time. So Alexander is very important to this day. First off, Alexander had a long heritage. His dad was a very key part of his role, even though they very had differences in the beginning. His father was able to unite all of the states together because Greece was not a one area. A lot of times it was a lot of different civil wars within the Greek culture. And so Philip was able to unite all that together. On the other hand, Alexander united so many different cultures together. So nowadays, nobody is actually 100% from this area or 100% part of that race. They are a huge mix of everything together. What he was able to do was not just bring technology, knowledge, art, and culture to different parts of the world at that time, but also mix and integrate different types of people together. As at the beginning of his campaign, a lot of his soldiers were very young. So as he went through, by the time he was done of his 10-year campaign, as they were coming back home, a lot of soldiers weren't going to be able to make it that trip. So they would stay where they're at and make do what they had, whether that being partnering with another civilian from that area that was from a different culture, or just living in that area and bringing all of the Greek knowledge that he has had and Greek values to that area, expanding it to everybody else. What I like to call is that Alexander was basically the spoon of the melting pot. He was mixing so many different cultures and so many different backgrounds together that the Middle East is now what it is today. There's so many different aspects of everybody living together. Another thing of why he is important in today's time is his military tactics and his knowledge. He was able to accomplish a lot of things that weren't during that time. One of the things that he is kind of like in this area was when Sparta stood up against Persia and their 300. They just showed how a little army can do a big damage to bigger armies. Now, Alexander kind of took that to an extreme and conquered so many different civilizations that outnumbered him with men, home front, food, resources, but he was able to conquer them and bring them together. His military changed what we see in today's times, how we have a massive military, but when we go on battles and missions, we normally travel in a smaller pack, smaller group, because they're able to do things faster, quietly, and get out of areas very, very fast. So Alexander offers a lot of different lessons. So over here, I listed 11 different lessons that he was able to show, and you were able to look after Alexander as a role model. So have a complete compelling vision. So Alexander, very young, but also very ambitious at his age and what he was wanting to accomplish. So, like I said, the Middle East at that time was their knowledge of the entire world. They didn't know different areas all over the place. So, his knowledge of conquering that world, he kind of almost did rule the world because that was their middle ground knowledge of he didn't know anything else around them. Um, Being creative, walk the talk. So be able to back up what he was able to say. He was a very lead in every battle. Wasn't just sitting in the back letting his guys take a lot of the brute force of it. He was in the front leading them, showing them how to um, go through different things. Very a good leader in a sense, not just letting people go and do what he just says. He was very leading from an example. Um, Now, in his lifetime, Alexander the Great, one of the history's most famous warriors and legends, with nearly um, he led by example and was able to show that a lot of times. So he was a great role model to look at now and see how he accomplished different things over time. And that'll be it for my presentation. Hope y'all enjoyed.